Jean Renoir's La Grande Illusion has no battle scenes. Every character is portrayed with sympathy and demonstrates an unusual level of mutual respect. It is a prison camp movie without a whiff of generic brutality. It is a First World War film without a single trench. One of its points of high drama comes when a German officer cuts the flower from a potted geranium. How is it regarded as one of the greatest ever war films and a cinematic landmark? Because it typifies the virtues that the celebrated film critic André Bazin identified in the best of Renoir's work: a profound empathy, visual realism, and philosophical subtlety. Of equal importance are the film's explorations of class and French masculinity that would resonate for decades to come. Bazin wrote that Renoir is the only filmmaker who has achieved that harmony between man and the world which is the mark of great art. He praised the film's use of deep focus composition and long shot duration that often frames multiple planes of action, denying privilege to a single character or focal point. Renoir's reputation is founded formally on his mastery of actor blocking and cinematography, and thematically on his humanistic outlook, a trait summed up by a character portrayed by Renoir himself in his equally celebrated La Règle de Jeu, with the simple phrase, "Everyone has his reasons." As with all great cinema, it is the seamless alliance between form and theme that is vital to La Grande Illusion's success. The director was the privileged son of the celebrated and wealthy artist Auguste Renoir, yet he was also a prominent member of the French Communist Party in the 1930s. Fully aware of these inherent contradictions, in La Grande Illusion, Renoir depicts the social differences between rank and officer as being as large as that between warring nationalities. Renoir was himself an injured First World War veteran, and the scenario, co-written with his underappreciated screenwriter Charles Spark, was partly inspired by Renoir's friendship with Major Armand Pinsard, another injured veteran whose stories of life in prison camps directly inspired the events in the film. Unfolding over 3 acts distinct in location and tone, La Grande Illusion introduces 2 French officers, de Bourdieu, an aristocrat, and Marechal, a working-class mechanic. Between the first and second scene they are captured off-screen by German forces, eventually ending up in a fortress commanded by Captain von Ruffenstein, an aristocratic officer forced to turn prison camp commandant after having received terrible injuries. He and de Bourdieu form a mutually respectful bond based on their shared aristocratic background. As von Ruffenstein, the great Erich von Stroheim plays a tragic figure clinging to a dying patrician ideal. He is snooty, yet shows no trace of villainy, avoiding the negative representational tropes that are typically encoded in a movie antagonist with a disfigured appearance. Von Ruffenstein is no Blofeld. Throughout the film, both guards and prisoners are given dignity and humanity that transcends conflict. This is remarkable given the contemporary imminence of another international conflict at the time of production. De Bourdieu and von Ruffenstein's aristocratic bond is undaunted by national allegiance, though they clearly recognise that the grand illusions of class, honour and glory in war are crumbling. De Bourdieu compliments von Ruffenstein's care of his geranium, which is ruefully noted as the only flower that blooms while nettles and ivy are everywhere, an evidently shared metaphor for the privations of their diminishing social stratum. This contrasts with the gradually developing solidarity between Marechal and his fellow countryman, the wealthy nouveau riche Jewish Rosenthal, who displays generosity and compassion to his compatriots, regardless of class or religious divides. Their relationship is egalitarian and develops out of necessary mutual support rather than duty. Rosenthal's willing redistribution of his personal wealth is likely rooted in Renoir's contemporary, if optimistic, communist leanings. In the film, spoken language is a barrier that has to be overcome to make true connections, as the proletarian Marechal gradually discovers. While the 2 aristocrats share their most intimate moments in English, pointedly excluding their respective countrymen, Marechal is frustrated at being unable to alert the incoming English prisoners as to the tunnel that they could use to escape. When Marechal is put in solitary confinement, his outburst about wanting to see daylight and hear his own language spoken in a friendly voice is met by his captor sitting down and offering a few words of comfort in French, along with a cigarette and the present of a mouth organ. The German is clearly pleased that his present has offered some comfort and comments to his companion that the war is lasting too long. As Marechal, Jean Gabin's performance is tied to his character's class status. His movements are economical and his emotional register is restrained, avoiding melodramatic excess. The character's internal struggle is conveyed through hesitation, subtle changes in tone, or in remaining silent. He's neither cynical nor idealistic. His suffering is communicated through a tired and haunted face. Flashes of temper are brief and remorse soon follows. The later scenes of he and Rosenthal tramping through the German countryside have an air of Vladimir and Estragon, or even Asterix and Obelix about them, as bickering is quickly followed by a shared spirit of indomitability. This is a representation of masculinity that includes vulnerability and emotional openness in small doses. As both my examples are pairings of male characters shaped by the privations of the coming years of occupation, there could be some influence traceable to La Grande Illusion. In prominent contrast to the cultivated bourgeois elegance and detachment maintained by de Bourdieu and von Ruffenstein, it was Gabin's screen image of naturalistic masculinity that was to resonate with the occupied France's popular front mythos that idealised the worker citizen as the moral backbone of the Republic, particularly as the defeat and occupation had left French masculinity somewhat bruised. In La Grande Illusion, as well as several other roles throughout the 30s, Gabin's seeming lack of pretension and his sense of fraternity across class and religious lines made him an emblematic figure, to the point where the actors taking up residence in Beverly Hills during the years of occupation hardly resonated. It was, after all, the image that mattered. In the film's first act, the vaudeville performance sequence is pivotal. Diegetically, it is a temporary, if artificial, escape from imprisonment and national divisions. The captors are invited to the show. Mimetically, the scene focuses attention on the themes of masculinity, social unity, nationalism, and Grande Illusion. The men dress in drag, suggestive of gender itself as enactment or costume, as Judith Butler's much later theories on gender performativity would explore. Renoir clearly signals the escapism as illusory. Already a self-reflexive performance within a performance, the mise-en-scène makes this meta-theatrical aspect unmistakable. Costumes and rudimentary set are thrown together before us. The lighting is practical. Prisoners and guards act as audience, prompting us with cues to laugh or cheer. During the rehearsal, the scene is initially frivolous, but pivots tonally when one young prisoner, worrying about his feminine appearance, suddenly silences the room. The camera lingers not on the performer, but on the audience of men, their faces transfixed. Why? Is he unexpectedly convincing? Is this the introduction of a homoerotic undercurrent to the male bonding? The absence of women in the men's lives, and almost the entire film, means performed femininity is a substitute for repressed longing, made charming by the young man's obliviousness to the effect. Renoir neither mocks nor eroticizes the scene. He just acknowledges the shared emotional need of these men. The show itself is halted mid-performance as news of a French victory in battle arrives. The mood of temporary unity collapses instantly, and war re-enters the scene. Surprisingly, it is one of the English soldiers who quickly begins a rousing rendition of La Marseillaise. Renoir has masterfully juxtaposed the artifice of theatre with the reality of political conflict, revealing how even the most joyful communal moments are conditioned by the ongoing hostilities outside the prison walls, though war and conflict are also, in themselves, performative. From a purely formalist perspective, this scene is an example of what critics such as David Bordwell, among others, would term a moment of retardation, in which the main plot, the escape plan, is suspended in favour of deepening the character dynamics. Perhaps retardation isn't quite the right term here. The sequence wholly enriches the story being told, and the characters transcend their strict narrative functions. Note the increasing closeness between Marechal and Rosenthal from this point on, in compositional proximity, shared reactions and body language. Meanwhile, de Bourdieu is aloof, almost detached, framed separately. Thus, narratively speaking, he is withdrawing from Marechal, preparing the ground for his later sacrifice. When that moment comes at the climax of the second act, de Bourdieu provides a distraction to allow Marechal and Rosenthal time to escape. His sacrifice illustrates the film's central themes of class division, fading aristocracy, and the illusion of honourable conduct in war. The stone courtyard, surrounded by high walls and snow, functions symbolically as a closed world. De Bourdieu is isolated in the foreground atop a tower, literally and figuratively elevated as his class status demands. His movement is graceful, even playful. He is whistling. In contrast with the military precision of the Germans, and in particular the enforced stiffness of von Ruffenstein, who are all seen reacting in cutaway. If in the vaudeville scene de Bourdieu had been a detached spectator, here he seems to be fully embracing his moment of performative heroism. His physical elegance, even his impractical white gloves, contrast visually with the stone-grey environment and the seriousness of von Ruffenstein. In Sacrifice, de Bourdieu has become a figure of theatricality and ritual. He seems to be enjoying himself as he fulfills his role. The formal juxtaposition of de Bourdieu's elevation and von Ruffenstein's ground-level helplessness visualises the shared but fractured nobility that they embody. "I shoot because I must," says von Ruffenstein, clearly in anguish and aware that his duty belongs to a bygone order. Indeed, if de Bolger did surrender at this moment, then the distraction he is trying to create would, logically speaking, last longer. That would not fit in with the ingrained sense of duty nor fulfil his narrative function, though, which is to expose the illusion that war is honourable, that class can transcend politics, that nobility guarantees meaning in a modern world. As de Bolger is shot, the camera lingers over his fall, as if depicting the symbolic death of an entire worldview. He even has time to check his watch to see if his duty has been fulfilled. Their part of the narrative then concludes with the scene where von Ruffenstein begs his dying friend's forgiveness for his accidentally fatal shot before cutting off the flower from his cultured geranium, his last action of the film. Each act has quietly dropped a seemingly major character. Cartier, the actor, had been left behind at the end of Act 1. Now it is von Ruffenstein's turn. One by one, Renoir sheds his performers of the Grande Illusion. The third act involves a love story between Marechal and Elsa, a German war widow played by Dieter Parlow. Elsa nurtures, without question, the starving escapees that should be her enemies. She's the only woman in the film who appears for more than one scene, though she has very few lines to say. The point being that she and Marechal communicate despite a language barrier, in defiance of any nationalistic sentiment. Marechal attempts some basic German and expresses wonderment that he understands her better than he had his captors. Like everyone else, they are both longing for the war to end, wishing for the comforts of a family life beyond national borders. Which brings us to the final sequence, where Marechal and Rosenthal escape over the snow-covered Alps into Switzerland. The landscape is a minimalist expanse of white, with the two figures tiny in extreme long shot, a visual contrast to the enclosed prison and a near blank canvas. There is neither suspense nor celebration at their escape. Instead, we view them from the perspective of a passing German patrol, one of whom blandly states, "They've crossed the border, we can't shoot." It is a surprisingly abrupt ending, but crucial. The border is arbitrary, not a visible barrier. The patrol has no ideology, they are just following the rules. Another grand illusion that brings the film to an understated but profound conclusion. Are the two Frenchmen free? Will Marechal return to Elsa when hostilities are ended? We're not going to know. Escape is not the end of war. La Grande Illusion would become perhaps the last film to depict the First World War uncoloured by the knowledge of how its aftermath would lead directly to the Second, with emphasis on the futility of the whole enterprise as an obligatory genre trope. Overall, Renoir's film is richer for the respect it gives everyone in it. In the theatre of war, most of the participants just want to go home.